Okay, so this is the July 11th, 2023 meeting of the Harbor Management Commission's Mooring Committee. In attendance are Jeffrey Warren, Jack Hirschler, Kim Taylor, Harbor Master Brian Leclerc, and John Dean. Do we have anyone on the line?
Pat Carroll is here today. Welcome all.
Thank you, Carol. Welcome. Okay.
Thank you.
So, Jeff. Oh, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Harbor Master's report.
Thank you. Number of things going on in the harbor. It's obviously the season, sailing season, boating season. I went to the club invited me. The yacht club invited me to do a little presentation to their summer staff before the kids started coming in for the sailing program. Just kind of going over some safety rules in general. Tell them that John and I are around and are going to have an eye out on them, and reminding them if I catch one of them using their cell phone while they're out there with kids in a boat that's moving, that's a big problem. That they're responsible for the kids. A little, doom and gloom talk, I call it. Who you're responsible for. The kids have been killed over the last few years in programs of the Sound. You have a huge responsibility, and don't ever forget that. It's a lot of fun, but you have a big responsibility. And they'd asked me to do that just to make sure they knew that. And also at the same time, how to call for help if they wanted help, etc. A few days later, John and I went there for the safety drill that they had at the club, their annual safety drill. Fairfield Police and Fairfield Fire both came, and it was a good drill. It was a good learning experience. AMR Ambulance was also there. That's something they do annually. I don't know if you've seen the video, if Jeff's circulated it to everyone or not, but we had a video the club produces of that. Perry Green, I've spoken to Justin about Perry Green, where he's managing, because some folks have wanted to get on the town moorings there. There's one gentleman who used to be there, but Justin's predecessor told him his boat was too big by a couple of feet. I see no restrictions for that, and he asked what I thought, and I said as long as the boat fits in the spot and doesn't overhang, by all means, he can go back in there again. So Justin is working on the Perry, that's assigning his moorings there. I offered again for us to take it over the commission, should the town want us to, since we control all the other moorings in that area. Had a bunch of phone calls, the usual summer phone calls. How do we get on the list? Can I park in the parking lot? Now that we put the sign up with my contact, a lot more people are calling. How do I get a dinghy there? How do I get in the harbor? What's the access? All that good stuff. So that's a good thing. I did a survey a few times now of all the docks in the harbor, now that I've got the new engine on my little whaler. A little more confident in going around, and I sent letters to everyone who had a boat on their dock to find out, because we have to keep track of those records. If you have a private dock and there's a boat sitting there, we need to know whose boat that is and the registration. They've all complied now. I've got the documents that come in, which is good. 2 people were kicked off their dock. The dock closest to the launching ramp at Yee Yacht Yard on the right-hand side was owned by a gentleman who allowed 2 folks on Harbor Road to keep their small boats there. Well, apparently he changed his mind about letting his neighbors keep their boats there, and they were looking for spots to put their boats. One of them put it on his mooring, since he already had a mooring. Now he can leave his dinghy there if he hurries. Work that out. The other was temporarily at the yacht club looking for a spot. So, we resolved that. They asked for priority placement in the harbor, and I explained riparian rights and how all that works. And if you're not, you got to get on the list like everyone else and waiting, even though you may have had a spot previously. We had a derelict vessel, which you probably know about by now. Last month, a 23-foot O'Day sailboat from like 1970 or 71 anchored itself in our area off of South Pine Creek. A resident called the police that evening because something looked wrong to the resident. It was rough out. The boat had a masthead anchor light on. It was rocking, and it just looked like an odd place to ever put your boat by shore. Fairfield police went out and found the boat was had a fishing pole in the water, but no one on board, and the light was on, and it was wide open. So they were very concerned someone may have drowned, fallen off their boat. Because the anchor was not holding well, they took the boat, towed it into Southport Harbor. So I took a look at it. They put the 24-hour notice on it. They did some good police work and determined whose boat it was. It turns out it was a homeless gentleman who bought the boat in New York, where it was registered. Registration came back to an abandoned building in New York. But he apparently had something shipped 2 days prior via Amazon to someplace in Norwalk with a name. So they did their tracing, and they found him going to Tennessee. He abandoned his boat. And just decided he was trying to go to Maine, but the rudder fell off, the engine was seized, and sails were getting tattered, so he just threw the hook off of our beach, took his dinghy and his dog, luckily drifted towards shore with the winds that night as opposed to the other way, left the dinghy on shore and just Ubered to the train station, or to the bus station, I should say, and got himself on a bus and said he didn't want the boat. What I was telling you this is it's interesting under the Connecticut law. So it was tied up at the metal dock at Yee Yacht Yard, the visitors dock, the big dock. I can order a boat moved and put it somewhere. I can also declare a boat abandoned if you give the notice, but an abandoned boat takes about 45 days minimum of notice to the DEP. Things have to get mailed. It's a big process, and there's a lot of boats, if you do the research, that have been abandoned, sitting around Connecticut waiting for auction, and a lot of these are not worth any money is the problem. These are just people just abandon their boats, basically, and want no claim to them. In this case, I was able to declare it a derelict boat, which is different under Connecticut law. A derelict boat is something that will not continue to float on its own, and therefore I have the right, once the person is given notice, to get the thing moved in 7 days, if it's worth less than $2,000. So the police put the red sticker on smartly when they towed it in, saying if this is your boat, you have 24 hours, that you have to move it. Smart thing to do. They found the person who says, I'm not coming back for it. I didn't have to send him notice because there's nowhere to send notice to. He's homeless, and the address on the registration doesn't exist. It's not a valid address. I then called up a surveyor, and I did the picture taking for him to save money without him coming all the way out here, and he did a $200 survey remotely. There was a hole in the deck of the boat where a cleat had been. Structural integrity issues, it was very concerning. The forestay was about ready to rip out. The sails were tattered. One of the side stays, if you pulled the port stay, it was coming, the whole chain plate was moving. So it's lucky the rig is still standing on the boat. Engine seized, bucket of urine down below, and trash. Where a bunch of peanut butter jars and literally a Home Depot bucket for a toilet that was filled up. Water would not drain out of the cockpit. It was just filling up. So because it was valued at zero, according to the surveyor, given its condition, I talked to Judd. Well, first I had it moved. Luckily, with the Fairfield police, after the safety drill, they were going back to Fairfield, so I asked if they'd tow it over there on their way, and they were glad to tow the boat out of our harbor for us. Justin wasn't happy when he showed up. He called me. He says, I've seen the police boat and what I think is your sailboat going by.
Not yet, not mine.
But we impounded it on the town's dock, the one by where they keep the DEP and where the fireboat used to stay. So it's much closer to the ramp to haul it out because, God forbid, it would finish sinking in Southport.
Yeah.
It would be a huge removal job to get it to that ramp.
Right.
This way, by that metal ramp in South Benson, it's a rope's throw of the big ramp, which is a much better ramp. So it's a safer spot when it went down all the way. Luckily, it hasn't. Until Thursday of this week, they've got a dumpster coming, and Public Works is going to be dragging it out physically, getting it into a dumpster, taking the mast down, and taking it away.
At town expense.
At town expense. They are picking up the cost. But Justin was talking that we should probably, and I know the chairman as well knows about this, that's something we have to think about in the budget. Whether we need a line item for this, because we may see more of these,
Right.
People just dump a boat in the harbor, and towns are seeing this. There's 1,000 of them over the last 10
Right.
years, and
Yeah.
the number's growing as boats are getting older. People are just getting rid of old fiberglass and wood boats this way.
Yeah.
And we don't want one sinking in the harbor. It's a problem if it breaks loose, and obviously that becomes very expensive to, even if there's no fuel on it, it's very expensive to raise a boat and get it out. Or to put it somewhere and auction it. You know, we can't be auctioning boats. It takes a lot of time, space, and expense to drag a boat out, to put it on shore for months and months and months to have it.
So does the town incur the cost of the survey?
They're going to pick up the survey.
They're going to pick up the survey if the state doesn't have any money to contribute. The Marine Department is taking care of all the costs.
All of it.
They asked me to take it out of my budget, which I point out I don't have a budget. So it's really easy. There is no money, and you apparently do. And and the dumpster is $800. They got a very good price on the dumpster. A number of companies.
That's a big dumpster to get a 23-foot boat into.
Yeah.
Wow.
And a number of companies apparently would not give them a dumpster. It's fiberglass. You don't want to cut fiberglass. It's fibers. It's a dangerous thing to be cutting. So I think they're just going to crush it as best. Luckily, it's a small enough boat and it's an old enough boat. They think you can get it in the dumpster one way or the other.
You know, there's a marina, or I'm sorry, a boatyard in Greenport that seems to specialize in abandoned boats and sunken boats. Seriously, you go out there, walk around, there's hundreds of boats that are obviously worthless and abandoned and have been sitting there for 10 or 15 years, you know, with trees growing through them and stuff. It's like a
Do they
graveyard.
want another one?
They want
It'll make it.
Well,
Well, the police had trouble towing it with parts
Yeah.
falling off the boat, even tying up the lines to it. Parts were falling off, and they were concerned.
Right.
They thought it was going to go down as well, where it was in Southport.
Yeah.
So,
So this homeless guy's making a nuisance of himself. Right?
and $1,000
is a deal.
somebody has to pick up.
Someone has to pay for that, and we're lucky it was cheap. I've represented other towns who have had this issue with large power boats full of fuel, one up the coast. It was 2 or 3 years ago. Someone abandoned a boat at their town dock full of fuel, and it was 35 feet, and it was starting to take on water. So they came up, it was Housatonic, tied it off, and walked away. And that becomes a bigger problem because now you have fuel leakage to deal with. As the boat goes down, the tanks are going to leak potentially.
I mean, the person can't walk away and not be liable for the cost, but you have to find somebody with enough money to actually...
Right.
And you have to have the town attorney try to chase him down.
And you got to chase him down and sue him.
And you have to do the auction process if it's not derelict, if it's only abandoned, because it's floating just fine. It's a really complicated process under state law. You can't just take the boat.
And then somebody might just untie the boat and say, well, I don't see it.
But it's got to get far enough out so it's not a...
25-foot mast is still going to stick up. But that was luckily resolved, and no cost to the commission and a minimal cost to the town. But everything else seems to be going fine. I've not seen any swimmers. It seems that things are going well in the harbor, in the channel.
Great. I see people fishing from the beach, by the wharf, off by the flagpole, off the rocks of the flagpole. They're
trying to relocate because
themselves.
The pier's being out of commission. And a lot of people ask me, that's one of the most common questions. When are we going to get the fishing pier back?
So I came over here tonight, I saw somebody fishing in a little powerboat off of the tide mill, just off the tide mill. Yeah. So there must be...
I've noticed a lot of that going on.
You have to wait till high tide.
That's a great spot to fish. The Manhattan, the bunker get trapped in there, and oh my God,
I see boats all the time. They go in there.
Stripers go in there.
A lot of whalers are in there.
A lot of stripers, a lot of Manhattan.
I just had never seen anybody right up against there fishing.
They seem to like that. There's a spot in the middle, right by that little channel that goes to the one dock. They like to go in there because on both sides it gets really shallow, and folks like to sit there.
Interesting.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. And we have a short agenda, so any new business?
Well, I guess the one thing for us that I'm going to bring it up on Tuesday as new business, but maybe bringing it up here gives you guys at least a week or so ahead of time to think about it, and that is, what do we do? Do we create a new line item for derelict and abandoned vessels? I mean, we could argue we've got money in the mooring fees account, but is it really fair to ask our mooring holders to be paying derelict and abandoned boat costs? Or is it fairer to ask the town of Fairfield taxpayers and thus add that line item and a request to the RTM next year for some amount of money, and I don't know, $1,000? I mean, we got lucky this time, I guess, from the sound of it.
It would be a one-time contingency fund for.
I mean, I guess I'd have to think about how, I mean, if we had the 35-foot powerboat that showed up at the town dock, oh my God.
I guess the point would be that if it's budgeted and the money is there, we're protected up to whatever the amount is if it's budgeted, and ask them to just renew that every year, just to have that fund sitting
as a fund.
That's one way to do it, I guess. And even, we have a big town budget. I would think we want enough money to cover it. And I don't know how they deal with the departments. Now, Public Works is doing the work. The police boat's going to move it over there. Justin has a boat now. So the two of them are going to move the boat to the ramp around the corner. And then Public Works is going to use their excavator. I don't know if they charge other departments back, if the marina has to pay or do an inter-department transfer to the workers. I don't know how
I don't know either.
We wouldn't care if it's actually budgeted in the harbor management budget. It could be in another department as long as
they could transfer
as long as there's department there.
Yeah,
right?
if
they're going to call it a Public Works responsibility.
Right. Well, and I don't know who the Marine Department is.
Police.
I mean, the Marine Department is going to pick up the surveyor's bill. So I don't know if that's
the police or
the police or that's what Justin said, the Marine Department. So I don't know if that's Marine Department of Parks and Rec.
I don't see how it's any different than any other unplanned for emergency. Like, a plane could crash, or somebody could leave a truck somewhere, or, there's all kinds of things that can happen that are unexpected that you can't really plan for.
But I don't know if the town has a budget for that, if each department has, or.
Yeah, I guess you can always go in.
I guess that's a question that we would need to find out.
Right. I think the point we should raise is that.
How do you want to handle
this? This is happening, and it could happen again.
Yeah.
Budget time, how are we going to handle this next year?
How are we going to handle it?
You need to have either know that we may be coming to contingency and need the money relatively quickly.
And it may not be within the jurisdiction of the Harbor Management Commission. It might be somewhere else.
It could be South Benson, the boat. It could be up in Fairfield. Someone could dump the boat. There was the boat last year.
That's another argument for why it shouldn't be in our budget. It should probably be in the town somewhere, but not here.
Well, but if we put it in our budget that goes to the RTM, then at least it's a contribution of all the Fairfield taxpayers as opposed to the 100, if we take it from the one.
Oh, no question. I'm just saying that in the town's budget, I wonder if it should be a Harbor Management expense, or should it be an expense of Parks and Rec, or whatever.
You remember the boat off of Fairfield last year, further out in the sound, that was found abandoned, the sailboat that stayed there for days. I don't remember.
Out by the lighthouse.
This was further, I know it was further out, and I don't know where it ended up going eventually. It didn't come to Fairfield as far as I know, but someone found a boat just adrift out there, and it stayed adrift for a while.
My impression is a lot of these boats get abandoned at yards rather than in the water.
Right.
So luckily we don't have that risk, although Justin does.
He has more than.
Yeah.
The yards are extra careful with older boats to make sure they don't get stuck on them.
Well, there's been a story in the Connecticut Post that I haven't read about an abandoned tug.
Yes, that's a story I read.
Yeah.
And they were talking about, the point you made is an awful lot of these boats that are sitting around, the yards get stuck with them.
Or worse, it just dies, and he says, that's it, and just comes to the closest harbor and drop it, leave it, tied to a dock anywhere.
Walk away.
Whether it's a private dock, Captain's Cove, or it could be our harbor.
Oh. Okay. Any other new business?
Ask for public comment.
Members of the public would like to comment?
Yes, I would like to commend our harbor master for doing an extremely wonderful job. His presence has become well known in Southport Harbor, and that little dink that he drives around in. And I think that Brian, from this retired harbor master, I'll give you a pat on the back. Thank you, gentlemen, Pat. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Pat.
Great.
I'm glad you're well, Pat.
Thank you very much.
Glad you're able to join us.
And the blessing of the fleet was another nice thing.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Thank you, John. I forgot about the.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we ended up doing the blessing of the fleet. We ended up, parade got canceled the day before, but the blessing went on, and because there was no thunder predicted, no lightning, I should say, predicted. And it was a nice event. There was probably, 50 boats?
Something close to it, yeah.
50 boats, was there that many? It seemed like
it was a great
good turnout.
Well, and the boaters They wanted to do it.
Yeah, they had the flags up on the sail.
You get wet anyways, it's a difference.
But then the sun came out, it was a
Yeah,
beautiful day.
It was a beautiful,
Worked well,
beautiful
And then
Saturday.
it started raining when it ended.
Yeah.
It was perfect, yeah.
So it was, and it worked well. Both police boats came. We have a better system than ever, I think, this year to do it.
Very orderly parading.
We have a front boat, a back boat, and me in the middle. We keep the boats moving when they get, should I go? Where do I follow? You know, kind of herding the cats out of the harbor. But it worked well.
Okay, motion for adjournment?
Yeah.
Second? Okay. How do you end the?
You just hang up.
Yep.
End
are
call,
adjourned.
end call. See you, Pat.